Imagine this. You're sitting in an important meeting. Everyone around the table is speaking English. People are sharing ideas, asking questions, making decisions. You have something valuable to say, but you stay silent. Not because you don't have a good idea, but because you're afraid of making a mistake. If that has ever happened to you, you're not alone. Millions of English learners understand English very well, but they lose confidence when it's time to speak during a meeting. The good news is, you don't need perfect English to sound professional. You don't need a perfect accent, and you certainly don't need to know every word in the dictionary. What you really need is confidence, clear communication, and the right phrases at the right moment. Hello, my amazing students. My name is Sarah, and today we're going to learn English through a real-life business situation. How to speak English confidently in meetings. You'll learn how to prepare before a meeting, how to express your ideas professionally, how to agree and disagree politely, how to ask for clarification when you don't understand something, and how to finish a meeting like a confident professional. Whether you're attending online meetings, working in an international company, studying at university, or preparing for your future career, these lessons will help you speak English more naturally and with greater confidence. As you listen, you'll improve your English vocabulary, your listening comprehension, your pronunciation, and your ability to communicate in real business situations. So don't worry about speaking perfectly. Focus on speaking clearly, politely, and confidently. That's what professional communication is all about. We'll explore this topic through 5 lessons. Lesson number 1, preparing before the meeting. Lesson number 2, speaking clearly and confidently. Lesson number 3, leading and participating in discussions. Lesson number 4, solving problems during meetings. And finally, lesson number 5, finishing the meeting like a professional. Let's begin with lesson number 1, preparing before the meeting. Before we start, can I ask you one question? A year from now, will your English be better than it is today? Or will you still be saying, "I'll start next week"? The truth is, most people don't fail because English is difficult. They fail because they never truly commit to it. That's why, for a limited time, I've reduced the price of the Native Flow English coaching experience to just $5. Not because it's worth only $5, but because I don't want money to be the reason you never start. For less than the price of a coffee, you can begin building a skill that can stay with you for the rest of your life. If you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Click the link in the description. Join us today, and I'll see you inside. Now, let's begin today's lesson. Lesson number 1, preparing before the meeting. Many people think confidence begins the moment a meeting starts. But in reality, confidence begins long before anyone says, "Good morning, everyone." The most confident people in meetings usually aren't the smartest people in the room. They're often the people who prepared the best. Imagine 2 employees. Both are invited to an important meeting in English. The first employee opens the meeting invitation just a few minutes before it starts. He has no idea what the discussion will be about. He doesn't review any documents. He doesn't think about what he wants to say. When the meeting begins, he feels nervous. Every question surprises him. Now imagine the second employee, the day before the meeting. She reads the agenda carefully. She reviews the important documents. She writes down a few ideas. She practices useful English expressions. When the meeting starts, she still feels a little nervous, but she's ready. Which person do you think will speak with more confidence? The answer is obvious. Preparation creates confidence. One of the first things you should do before any meeting is read the agenda. An agenda is simply a list of topics that will be discussed. When you know the topics, your brain has time to prepare vocabulary and ideas. For example, if tomorrow's meeting is about marketing, you can review words like customer advertising sales strategy campaign. If the meeting is about technology, you can review words such as software project deadline, update system learning. Just a few important words before the meeting can make a huge difference. Another excellent habit is preparing a few sentences you know you'll probably use. Instead of trying to invent everything while speaking, prepare useful phrases in advance. For example, "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'd like to share my opinion." That's a great point. I completely agree. Could you explain that again, please? These simple expressions are used in thousands of business meetings every day. The more familiar they become, the more naturally you'll speak. Another common mistake is trying to memorize long speeches. Don't do that. Real meetings are conversations. People interrupt. They ask unexpected questions. The discussion changes direction. Instead of memorizing every sentence, understand your main ideas. Think about 3 important points you want to communicate. If you know your ideas, the words will come much more naturally. It's also helpful to learn about the people attending the meeting. Who are they? What departments do they work in? What is the purpose of the meeting? Knowing these details helps you choose the right tone and vocabulary. Now let's talk about something many English learners worry about: their accent. Many people spend more time worrying about sounding like a native speaker than communicating clearly. But professional communication isn't about having a perfect accent. It's about being understandable. Speak a little slower if necessary. Pronounce your words clearly. Pause naturally between ideas. Most people would rather listen to clear English spoken slowly than fast English that nobody understands. Here's another useful tip. Arrive a few minutes early. If it's an online meeting, test your microphone. Check your internet connection. Make sure your camera works properly. If it's an in-person meeting, arrive early enough to relax before everyone else arrives. Those extra minutes can reduce a lot of unnecessary stress. Finally, remember that nobody expects perfection. Even native English speakers make mistakes during meetings. They forget words. They correct themselves. They ask people to repeat something. That's completely normal. Your goal isn't to speak perfect English. Your goal is to communicate your ideas clearly and professionally. Because meetings aren't competitions, they're opportunities to share ideas, solve problems, and work together. And every confident meeting begins with good preparation. Lesson number 2, speaking clearly and confidently. Many English learners believe they need to sound like native speakers before they can speak confidently in meetings. That's one of the biggest myths about business English. In reality, the most effective speakers aren't always the most fluent. They're the ones who communicate their ideas clearly. Think about a manager leading an international meeting. Some participants come from Japan, others from Brazil, Germany, India, France, Morocco, Mexico. Everyone speaks English with a different accent, and that's completely normal. The goal isn't to sound exactly like someone from London or New York. The goal is to understand each other. Clear communication is far more important than perfect pronunciation. One simple way to speak more clearly is to slow down. When people become nervous, they often speak much faster. Ironically, speaking faster usually creates more mistakes. Instead, take your time. Pause between ideas. Breathe naturally. A short pause doesn't make you look unprepared. It makes you sound thoughtful. Now, let's learn some professional phrases that are used in meetings every day. Suppose your manager asks, "What do you think about this proposal?" instead of saying, "It's good." You can sound much more professional by saying, "I think it's a great idea because it could improve our efficiency." Or, "In my opinion, this approach would benefit our team." Notice the difference. The second answers don't use difficult English. They simply explain the reason. Giving a reason makes your opinion stronger. Sometimes you'll agree with someone. Instead of saying only, "I agree," try expressions like, "I completely agree with your point." That's an excellent suggestion. "I think you're absolutely right. I share the same opinion." These phrases sound natural in professional meetings. But what happens when you disagree? Many English learners worry that disagreement sounds rude. It doesn't if you do it politely. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," you could say, "I see your point, but I'd like to suggest another perspective." Or, "That's an interesting idea. However, I think we should also consider another option." Notice what happens here. You respect the other person's opinion before sharing your own. That's a sign of professionalism. Another common situation is not understanding something. Many learners stay silent because they're embarrassed. But asking questions is completely normal. Even native speakers ask for clarification. Here are some useful expressions. "Could you repeat that, please?" "Could you explain that in another way?" "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that." "Could you clarify what you mean?" Nobody will think less of you for asking. In fact, asking questions often shows that you're paying attention. Let's imagine a short conversation. Your colleague says, "We need to move the deadline forward." You're not completely sure what that means. Instead of pretending you understand, you could say, "Just to make sure I understand correctly, do you mean we should finish the project earlier?" That's a professional way to confirm information. Another habit that makes people sound confident is using positive language. Instead of saying, "I don't know," you could say, "Let me think about that for a moment." Or, "I'll check the information and get back to you." These responses sound calm and professional. Now let's talk about eye contact and body language. Your words matter, but your body also communicates. Sit comfortably. Keep a natural posture. Look at the person who's speaking. Smile when appropriate. Avoid looking down at your desk every time you speak, even during online meetings. Looking toward the camera creates better eye contact with the people listening. Finally, remember that confidence doesn't come from never making mistakes. It comes from continuing to speak even after making one. If you forget a word, keep going. If you make a grammar mistake, correct yourself and continue. Most people won't even notice, and if they do, they'll usually appreciate your effort to communicate. Professional meetings aren't about perfect English. They're about solving problems, sharing ideas, and working together. The clearer your communication becomes, the more confident you'll feel. And the more confident you feel, the easier speaking English in meetings becomes. Lesson number 3, leading and participating in discussions. Speaking in a meeting is one thing. Helping the discussion move forward is another. Many people believe that only managers or team leaders should speak often during meetings, but that's not true. Every participant has the opportunity to add value. You don't need to speak the most. You simply need to speak with purpose. Imagine a meeting with 10 people. Everyone has good ideas, but nobody wants to speak first. The room becomes quiet. People look at each other, waiting for someone else to begin. Finally, one person says, "I'd like to start by sharing an idea." Immediately, the conversation begins. Sometimes leadership starts with one simple sentence. One of the easiest ways to participate is by asking thoughtful questions. Good questions show that you're interested. They also help the team think more deeply. For example, you could ask, "What are our main priorities? How will this affect our customers? What's our deadline for this project? Have we considered any alternative solutions?" Notice that none of these questions are difficult, but they encourage meaningful discussion. Another important skill is giving suggestions politely. Instead of saying, "We should do this," try saying, "I'd like to suggest another approach," or "What if we tried this instead?" Or, "One possible solution could be," these expressions invite discussion instead of forcing your opinion. People are usually more open to ideas when they're presented respectfully. Now let's talk about interrupting. Interrupting someone sounds rude, but sometimes it's necessary. Perhaps you need clarification. Perhaps you have important information. Or maybe the conversation is moving in another direction before you've had the chance to speak. The key is to interrupt politely. Here are some useful expressions. "Sorry to interrupt, but may I add something?" "If I may, I'd like to mention one point." "Excuse me, could I quickly comment on that?" These phrases show respect while allowing you to join the discussion. Imagine your colleague is explaining a project. You remember an important detail that could affect everyone's decision. Instead of waiting until the meeting ends, you politely say, "Sorry to interrupt, but I think we should also consider the client's deadline." You've interrupted, but you've done it professionally. Another valuable habit is supporting your ideas with reasons. Don't simply say, "I disagree." Explain why. For example, "I think this option may be more effective because it reduces costs." Or, "I believe this strategy could help us reach more customers." Giving reasons makes your contribution more persuasive. It also helps other people understand your thinking. Listening is just as important as speaking. Many people spend the entire meeting thinking about what they're going to say next. As a result, they stop listening. The best communicators do the opposite. They listen carefully first. Then they respond. One useful technique is to connect your comment to what someone else has already said. For example, "I'd like to build on what Maria just mentioned," or "I completely agree with Ahmed's point, and I'd like to add something." These expressions make the discussion feel natural and collaborative. They also show that you're paying attention. Sometimes your idea may not be accepted, and that's okay. Professional meetings aren't about winning every argument. They're about finding the best solution together. If someone disagrees with you, don't take it personally. Instead, respond calmly. You might say, "That's a good point. Let me think about it." Or, I understand your concern. Perhaps we can find a solution that combines both ideas. This kind of response shows maturity and teamwork. Finally, remember that participation isn't measured by how many times you speak. It's measured by the value you bring. One thoughtful question, one helpful suggestion, or one clear explanation can contribute more than speaking continuously without purpose. The most respected professionals aren't always the loudest people in the room. They're often the people who listen carefully, think clearly, and speak when they have something meaningful to say. So don't worry about talking all the time. Focus on helping the conversation move forward, because that's what great meeting participants do. Lesson number 4. Solving problems. During meetings, no meeting goes perfectly. Sometimes people misunderstand each other. Sometimes the internet connection becomes unstable. Sometimes you forget an important word, and sometimes you're asked a question you weren't expecting. The difference between confident professionals and nervous speakers isn't that they avoid these situations. It's that they know how to handle them calmly. Let's begin with one of the most common problems. You don't understand what someone just said. Many English learners panic. They smile politely, nod their heads, and pretend they understood. At first, this may seem like the easiest solution, but later, it often creates even bigger problems. Imagine your manager asks you to prepare a report by Friday. You misunderstand and think the deadline is next Friday. A simple misunderstanding suddenly becomes a serious mistake. That's why asking for clarification is always better than pretending. You can say, "I'm sorry. Could you repeat that, please? Could you speak a little more slowly? I just want to make sure I understood correctly." Or, "Could you explain that one more time?" These are professional expressions. No one will think you're weak for using them. In fact, people usually appreciate that you want to understand correctly. Now imagine another situation. You're explaining your idea, and suddenly, you forget an important English word. This happens to everyone, even advanced English learners. The worst thing you can do is stop speaking completely. Instead, describe the word. For example, suppose you forget the word printer. You could say, "the machine we use to print documents." If you forget the word deadline, you might say, "the final date when the project must be finished." Communication isn't about knowing every word. It's about expressing your ideas. Sometimes using different words is just as effective. Another common challenge is answering unexpected questions. Your manager suddenly asks, "Sarah, what's your opinion on this issue?" You know the answer, but you need a few seconds to think. Don't panic. You don't have to answer immediately. Professional speakers often use expressions like, "That's a good question. Let me think about that for a moment. I'd like a second to organize my thoughts." These short sentences give your brain time to prepare a clear response, and they sound completely natural. Now let's imagine that someone disagrees with your idea. Many people immediately become defensive. They try to prove they're right. But professional communication isn't about winning arguments. It's about finding the best solution. Instead of saying, "No, you're wrong," you could respond, "I understand your point." That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't considered that. Let's explore both options. These phrases keep the conversation respectful. They also encourage teamwork. Another situation that often happens in meetings is technical problems. Perhaps your microphone stops working during an online meeting. Maybe your internet connection freezes or your presentation doesn't open. Instead of becoming frustrated, stay calm. You can say, "I apologize. It looks like I'm having a technical issue. Could you give me just a moment? Thank you for your patience." Everyone experiences technical problems from time to time. Remaining calm leaves a much better impression than becoming stressed. Another valuable habit is admitting when you don't know something. Some people think saying, "I don't know," makes them look unprofessional. Actually, guessing incorrect information is often much worse. A better response might be, "I'm not completely sure, but I'll check and get back to you." Or, "I'd like to verify that information before answering." These responses show honesty, responsibility, and professionalism. Finally, remember that mistakes are part of communication. Maybe you'll pronounce a word incorrectly. Maybe you'll use the wrong tense. Maybe you'll forget an expression. Don't let one small mistake control the rest of your meeting. Correct yourself if necessary. Smile. And continue speaking. Most people won't remember your small mistakes. They'll remember your confidence, your ideas, and your willingness to participate. The truth is, every experienced professional has made mistakes in meetings. What helped them improve wasn't perfection, it was practice. Every meeting teaches you something new. Every conversation makes you more comfortable. Every challenge helps you become a stronger communicator. So don't fear problems during meetings. See them as opportunities to learn. Because every successful meeting isn't the one without mistakes. It's the one where people communicate, cooperate, and continue moving forward together. Lesson number 5. Finishing the meeting like a professional. Many people think the meeting is over when the discussion ends, but experienced professionals know something different. The last few minutes of a meeting are often just as important as the first few. Why? Because this is when everyone makes sure they understand what happens next. Imagine attending a 1-hour meeting. People share ideas. They solve problems. They make decisions. Then everyone simply says, "Goodbye." No summary, no action plan, no confirmation. The next day, people remember different things. One person thinks the report is due on Monday. Another believes it's due on Wednesday. Someone starts working on the wrong task. A successful meeting suddenly creates confusion. Now imagine another meeting. Before anyone leaves, one person says, "Let's quickly summarize what we've decided today." Immediately, everything becomes clear. Everyone knows their responsibilities. Everyone understands the next steps. That's why summarizing is such an important professional skill. You don't need to give a long speech. Simple sentences are often enough. For example, to summarize today's meeting, we've agreed on 3 main points. Our next step is, the deadline is next Friday. These expressions help everyone leave the meeting with the same understanding. Another important habit is confirming your own responsibilities. Suppose your manager asks you to prepare a presentation. Instead of simply saying, "Okay," you could say, "Just to confirm, I'll prepare the presentation and send it by Thursday afternoon." This shows responsibility. It also gives the other person a chance to correct you if there has been any misunderstanding. Sometimes meetings end with action items. An action item is simply a task that someone agrees to complete after the meeting. Professional teams often review these tasks before leaving. For example, John will contact the client. Maria will update the budget. I'll prepare the final report. When everyone clearly understands their responsibilities, projects move forward much more smoothly. Another valuable skill is thanking people for their time. No matter how short or long the meeting was, showing appreciation creates a positive impression. Simple expressions work perfectly. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I appreciate your ideas today. It was great working with all of you. Professional communication is built on respect, and respect is often shown through small, thoughtful words. If the meeting was online, don't disappear immediately after the discussion ends. Wait a moment. Smile. Say goodbye naturally. These small details make you appear more professional and approachable. Now let's talk about something that happens after many business meetings. The follow-up email. A follow-up email is a short message sent after the meeting to summarize what was discussed. It usually includes the main decisions, the action items, important deadlines, and sometimes the date of the next meeting. Even a simple email like this can prevent many misunderstandings. Imagine receiving a message that says, "Thank you for today's meeting. As discussed, I'll complete the presentation by Thursday, and we'll meet again next Monday to review the results." Everything is clear. Everyone knows what to do. That's excellent professional communication. Finally, remember that every meeting is an opportunity to improve. After each meeting, ask yourself a few simple questions. What did I do well? What new vocabulary did I learn? What could I do better next time? Maybe today you successfully shared your opinion. Maybe you asked your first question in English. Maybe you spoke for only 30 seconds. That's still progress. Confidence isn't built in one meeting. It's built meeting after meeting, conversation after conversation. Every time you speak, you become a little more comfortable. Every time you listen, you understand a little more. Every time you participate, you grow as a communicator. One day, you'll remember the time when speaking English in meetings felt impossible, and you'll realize how far you've come. So don't wait until your English is perfect before speaking. Speak now, learn now, improve now, because every professional speaker started exactly where you are today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope these lessons help you feel more confident in your next English meeting. Keep practicing, keep participating, keep believing in yourself. And remember, great communication isn't about using the most difficult words. It's about helping people understand your ideas clearly, confidently, and respectfully. I'll see you in the next lesson.